Welcome to Insight. I thank you for allowing us to come into your homes today. I would like for you to call a friend, get a pen, because the information that we're coming through today is going to be very, very important. Like Dr. Z. York, Part 2, we did the show previous before, and today we have a new set of guests on, and I would like to briefly introduce them to you. To my immediate right is Attorney Adrian Patrick. He is the attorney in the case for Dr. Malachi York. And to my left is Dr. Al Woolall, who is the agent for the property owner. And also on stage with me is Frederick Johnson and Damon Pryor. Welcome to Insight. Thank you all for coming into Insight.
Thank you for inviting us.
First of all, I would like for our listeners to really understand this, is that this is a very serious situation here. At least I feel that it's very, very serious, is because a man's life, and not only his life, but the future of what he's about, is really in jeopardy here. And he has been accused of several indictments. In my own words, I feel that he has been treated shoddy, and he has not been given his true due in court. But needless to say, that is my own particular feeling, and we will come down to the very bones of the case as soon as I introduce Attorney Adrian Patrick, and he will first of all explain the situation to us. Adrian Patrick, again, welcome to Insight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Please explain to us some of the particulars about this federal case.
All right. First of all, in the federal case, there were several counts within the indictment. There's one federal indictment and there's a state indictment. So within the indictment, there's several counts. Initially, there was a federal indictment that involved 4 counts of transporting minors in interstate commerce for purposes of sexual relations. So that the audience and everyone will understand what that means is that basically the allegation is that there was a move from New York down to Georgia, and the primary purpose of that move, and or the sole purpose of that move, was for Dr. York to molest children. Now, later, after the 4-count indictment, there was a superseding indictment, or another indictment, that added more counts to the indictment. Now, there ended up being a total of 11 counts, and I'm looking at it. They ended up being a total of 11 counts, and they involved, primarily what was the distinction is that it involved a federal RICO conspiracy count. Now, the first 3 counts of the indictment involved conspiracy or RICO charges. Now, RICO charges generally were created for the government to attack the mafia.
Right. In fact, that's what I was just about to ask you that.
Right.
Most people think that this is just a racketeering charge.
Right. Well, this case involved substantially different facts than what historically would be found in a mafia-type organization. The reason that, historical reason why the RICO charges were created, because it made the prosecution easier to convict a mafia boss or mafia don or whatever.
Right.
Now, what has happened in several cases, the RICO laws have been misapplied. For example, in the recent case in the federal courts of Atlanta, involving the pimps in the child prostitution, right? The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals is taking a very close look at that because they feel that the RICO charges in that case they were misapplied. And similarly in this case, that would be one of the issues that we will cover on appeal. Nevertheless, outside of the RICO charges, there were several counts, 4 counts of transporting children in interstate commerce for purposes of having sex. And also there were 3 money structuring charges. And the money structuring basically means that what the allegation was is that if you deposit over $10,000 in cash in a financial institution, that financial institution has to report that to the IRS. And the allegation was that Dr. York intentionally did not deposit $10,000 into a financial institution, and thus he was evading IRS reporting requirements. Now, the jury found Dr. York not guilty of one of the counts of transporting children in interstate commerce, and that was as far as going from Georgia to Florida or Disney World. In the other counts, they found Dr. York guilty on those counts.
You said that the jury did not find him guilty on one of the charges going from Georgia to Florida.
Right.
Explain that.
All right. Now, outside of the travel from New York to Georgia, the federal government also alleged that there was trips from Georgia to Disney World in Florida, and that was also for the purposes of having sex with children.
Okay.
Right. And the jury found him not guilty on that allegation.
Okay.
Which to me would indicate an inconsistent verdict because the same witnesses that testified that there was sex from New York to Georgia are the same witnesses that testified that there was sex from Georgia to Disney World.
Okay.
Right. Right. And basically, that's the sum total of the charges. We have a very strong appeal in this case, and I could talk to you briefly, if you like, about the post-trial proceedings.
Okay. Before you go into that, I want to switch over to Dr. Al Willard. You are the agent for the property owner?
Yes, down at 44 Shadydale Road. Explain
that to our audience, what the property owner and your position.
My involvement? Okay, well, the property known as 404 Shadydale Road is actually the land of the Yamassee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation. It encompasses about approximately 476 acres that's located in Putnam County, Georgia. And ironically enough, that's where a large majority of these alleged charges were said to have taken place.
Okay.
And there's been a misconception, which has been one of our problems, which will also be addressed in regards to the appeal, that the warrant that they came for the search and seizure on that property was supposed to have the name of the property owners on that land, on that search warrant, but that was not on there. They thought that it was Malachi York's property. It was at one time, but then had transferred over to other members who were also involved with the Yamassee Native American Moors.
So it was like shared owners.
Right, of which Malachi York was not one of. So that's basically like if I did something wrong and I was at one time at the house that you now own, they come in and raid your house because I lived there at one time without going through the proper procedure of making sure that your name was on it for them to come there.
I'll follow you.
And another big part of it is a whole issue of jurisdiction. And the reality of it is that Malachi York, who's affectionately known to us as Chief Black Thunderbird Eagle, chief of the Yamassee Native American Moors, is a Native American. Some people choose the term Indian, but he is a Native American.
Okay.
And thus falls into a different type of jurisdiction than the way they're treating him currently within the system. And this is something that hasn't been alleged as far as just since this case has ensued. This is something that he's made known through a genealogical chart that stems all the way back from Ben York of the Lewis and Clark expedition, all the way even before that to Old York, and the tie-in with the Yamassees and the Shoshone Native Americans there.
Right.
So this is another argument that we're saying that they're intentionally trying to ignore.
Oh, I see. Now, what other involvement have you had with Dr. York and the nation?
Okay, well, in regards to the property, because I have educational background in the engineering field, civil particularly,
right.
I had taken on the position of getting involved with different things involved with the structures on the property. In other words, when there was building permits that were required to be obtained, if there were a liaison needed between the owners and general contractors or other engineers, I was involved in that.
Right.
And what brought me to be as convicted as I am to be involved with this case is that I was there from the very beginning to see the racial discrimination by the county commissioners of Putnam County, the racist discrimination by the sheriff, Howard Richard Seals of Putnam County, Georgia, the planning and zoning. I was there when plans were submitted to be able to build on our own land and denied without reason. And this is continued harassment, continued racial discrimination that stems back as far as I've been involved, which goes back to 1997.
Okay, and what do you think brought this racial discrimination about?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that were involved in what brought all of this about. But in my point of view, from the angle that I've been dealing with, for this point, is that that's also the home to Reynolds Plantation. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's one of the most well-known, wealthiest resorts for different people of the upper echelon here in Georgia and all over.
Okay.
And what happened is that when you take a Native American who they see as black, come in the middle of their backyard and establish 476 acres, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you see pyramids, you see obelisks, you see totem poles, you see sphinxes, you see different things of culture that's being erected, and it didn't go through their quote-unquote approval of, is this okay for us to build on our land, the things that we want to build. They had a problem with that, because they knew before they get to this huge resort, which also ties in Mercer Reynolds and Sheriff Seals, as well as some other individuals who were in influential political positions in Georgia, they would have to pass on 142 right by our Native American village, and that was going to create a problem for them.
Right. Getting back to Attorney Adrian Patrick, you was mentioning about the post-trial procedure.
Right.
Give us some insight on that, because I'm kind of particularly, interested in that post-trial.
Okay. First of all, when a lot of times I refer to an appeal, but when I say appeal, I mean any post-trial proceeding. In a federal case, after there is a conviction, there is a period of time before sentencing. In other words, the person convicted does not immediately become sentenced.
Okay.
And thus, the actual, per se, written brief for an appeal is not filed till after the sentencing.
Okay.
But I want to address the interim time between the conviction and the sentencing.
Right.
And what has currently been filed is a motion for new trial, based upon, we just stated that the evidence was insufficient. We felt that the way the trial was conducted was improper, things like that, but we had some very strong issues there.
Okay.
Also, we don't feel all of the elements of the crimes alleged were proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Also, we filed a motion to stay the forfeiture proceedings in this case, and a motion for a judgment of acquittal. Now, basically, the motion for judgment of acquittal addresses the fact that we don't feel there was enough evidence presented for the case to even go to a jury. That basically the judge should have dismissed the case prior to even being submitted to a jury. That's how strongly we felt about the case. Also, the motion to stay the forfeiture proceedings pending the appeal, meaning that prior to any action being taken on any of the properties, that we should wait on the appellate courts to make a final decision on the case. Because if the property is forfeited or seized prior to the appellate courts making their decision, then there could be irreparable harm to Dr. York.
Isn't that something like prejudging it before it?
Right. If it becomes seized prior to the appeal, then there is a prejudgment other words, you're assuming that the appellate courts are going to make a decision in the government's favor as opposed to Dr. York's favor. You follow me?
Yeah, can you speak on some of the alleged accusations?
The properties?
Yeah, as far as Dr. York and I mean the charges that said was pending.
Right. The forfeiture in relation to the charges, you mean, or just the charges, period?
Just the charges
in general.
In general, right.
All right. Let me address one more thing. After the sentencing, you have 10 days to file a notice of appeal.
Right.
Then you have to file a brief after that point.
Okay.
Right. So it's a fairly lengthy process.
Right.
And in this particular case, there is also a state case pending.
Okay.
So there's an issue that has to be dealt with also. So there's a substantial amount of post-trial activity.
Federal and state.
Right.
Okay.
In this case.
Okay.
Right. Now, in terms of the charges themselves, generally the allegations were involving individuals that were ousted from the organization for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
And these individuals got together and basically went to South Beach, Miami, which is a trip that was organized by Jacob York.
Mm-hmm.
And
Jacob York is who?
Is Dr. York's son.
Okay.
Right. And it was organized by Jacob York, and it is our defense theory, and it still remains our defense theory.
Mm-hmm.
And we presented this theory at trial, but we were limited in our presentation of it. But nevertheless, that Jacob York, who had a grudge against his father, organized all of these members that.
Jacob York is who?
Is Dr. York's son.
Okay.
Right. And it was organized by Jacob York, and it is our defense theory, and it still remains our defense theory.
Mm-hmm.
And we presented this theory at trial, but we were limited in our presentation of it. But nevertheless, that Jacob York, who had a grudge against his father, organized all of these members that were ousted. They went to South Beach. Now, the irony of that is you have alleged child molested victims that went to South Beach, a resort area, very expensive resort area, to have fun, basically, immediately prior to going to the FBI to report child molestation. And basically what happened right after the weekend trip, within a day or two, that's when the first allegations were made to the FBI.
Right.
Now, we were limited in bringing in evidence of details of the conspiracy, and we have one of the gentlemen here that could outline the details of the conspiracy, because at trial what would have been greatly helpful for the jury to weigh is all of the evidence that we had showing that this is a reliable theory, that this theory is true. Because by the court ruling against us, it seems as if we were just reaching at a defense theory, but we actually had hard evidence of this conspiracy through people that actually heard Jacob York state that he was going to get his father and he was going to bring down his father.
We have...
Right.
Who's that?
Daniel Fryer. He's one of the individuals. But we had several individuals, not just him, but he was one of the individuals that was prevented from testifying at trial. Can
you speak to that now?
Yes, you can say that.
Yes.
How you doing?
Okay. Welcome to Insight.
I was one of the individuals who went inside the courtroom to testify on behalf of Dr. York.
Yes.
Involved in the conspiracy, whose the main actors was his son Jacob York, as our lawyer just spoke. How he, over the years, it's been known through certain members of our community, of our tribe, know of his vendetta, his personal vendetta against his father, for personal reasons. This has nothing to do with anything factual. It's just personal biasness, jealousies, envy, and greed, and his own personal pursuits.
Has this been going on for years, you say?
Going on for years, right?
Before he came down here?
Before he came down, people in New York were well known in most of the major cities in this country. And he has an influence in the music industry.
Okay.
And people in the music industry know Dr. York as being a very influential, positive icon in the music industry.
Okay.
So his son following in his father's footsteps, attempting to follow in his father's footsteps, but he went another route, and which I don't know if you're familiar with Little Kim and Junior Mafia. He put out a lot of negative music, and he wanted his father to back that. And his father is not that type of man to back any pornographic rappers and violence for the younger generation. So because of that, and not having his father's back, and he jealousy and it stirred over the years. And with certain other members who were what you would call like outcasts because of their practices on our land and in our community, they were ousted. And because of that, it gave the motive for Jacob York to have vendettas against his father and come together with these people, like he said, on a South Beach trip. He gathered and financed this trip and talked to these young girls and promised them money, promised them jewelry, cars, because and to be on a federal payroll, that was the whole thing, to get them involved so they could have money later in the future or whatever. But it was for his own personal reasons. Okay. Right. So he was Dr. York's son. Because of that, they followed this guy and listened to him and took this trip. And that's where the whole plan and things started up with them coming up with these fake allegations of child molestation. None of these so-called alleged victims were children. None of them. These are all grown adults who have previous history. Wait a minute, hold on. Let's say that again. None of these alleged victims were children? None of these alleged victims were children. All of them were adults who had backgrounds, known for their obscene sexual behavior, known for doing drugs and going to parties and being unruly when we as an organization, as a tribe, try to keep our culture in line and give a positive influence for our children. They were doing the opposite. So it was easier for Jacob York to contact these members who were already upset and mad because they couldn't, no longer participate because of their disobedience and going against the rules and regulations that we had set up. So he gathered them, and because of whatever his, I don't know what he promised them, his influence in the music industry, he would take them to parties and introduce them to certain stars, and that's how it all started up. But he's the axis of it, and that was prevented in the court. The judge did not want the jury to hear that because it would have just shut the case. But I mean, they would have had to let Dr. York walk out, because the motive would have been established, and that's the conspiracy there. I mean, he actually came to me. I know him personally. This is not something that's going on hearsay. This is something that, and I told him to get out of my face. Yeah. Jacob York. Yes, I know him. Okay. I knew the plot and the things that he was trying to do, and I decided, because of the injustice that was being done to him, to testify and let the world know. That's why I'm here now. That's why we're here. Okay. You want to add something to that?
I think Damon needs to, there's a couple points on the point, but I think Damon needs to state that Jacob York actually told him. Yes. Right. This was he told, that's the thing, he told me face to face. And this came up in the trial? Well, it came up at a hearing outside the presence of the jury. Okay. So when Damon states that he testified before the judge outside the presence of the jury, so the judge can make a determination as to whether this evidence can come in.
Stop a second.
He actually screamed.
How did he get? I'm just asking the question. Right. How did he get to testify to the judge outside the presence of the jury?
All right, it's a legal evidentiary issue because it was what they call hearsay. Anytime another person is going to testify to what that person stated, that's hearsay. Okay. All right, now, so the judge has to make a determination as to whether or not hearsay can be admitted, right? But in this situation, it was our position that because our defense was based on this allegation, that we had reliable witnesses, not just Damon, but we had one of Jacob York's sisters, also for the same thing was stated to her, and that all of this evidence needed to come into before the jury, so that the jury can get a true picture of the truth in the case. Okay. It was limited. Now, I would suffice it to say that hearsay was allowed in from the prosecution's point the entire trial.
But it wasn't. But it wasn't allowed in on your side.
Right. A very limited amount was let in, but it didn't get to the point to fully establish the defense the motive, as Damon stated, the motive. He would have been the person, plus Jacob's sister, if the judge would have let certain testimony in to establish the reason why Jacob York set up this conspiracy. And we were not allowed to allow that evidence in. And that would be one of the issues that we will raise on appeal.
The willpower is beginning to stink a little bit.
Now, let me point one more thing out.
Yes.
One thing that was not addressed and never sufficiently answered by any of the alleged victims is who financed the trip to South Beach. Now, if anybody's ever been to South Beach is one of the most expensive vacation areas in the world.
Okay.
And there were 2 vans that were rented. They lived at a very expensive hotel for an entire weekend. Food, alcohol, and everything was paid for. And as far as our information is concerned, none of these alleged victims that went had jobs. So the question still remains, who financed this trip?
Who paid for the trip?
Right. And that was never answered.
The jury's still out on that?
Right.
Oh, man. All right. You was going to say something. I'm sorry.
Add to that. Not only was Damon Fry prevented from testifying, like the attorney said.
Frankie Johnson, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. York's daughter also testified, but her testimony was limited because the same procedure that the judge did with Damon did also with Dr. York's daughter. And her testimony was limited. We also had other witnesses, just as the attorney said, that was prevented from testifying at all. And one of those witnesses went on that South Beach trip, and it was a female, and she also heard of the plot, and they were discussing it freely in the travel going down at South Beach when they were partying, staying at the bars and the clubs down there, and on their way back. Because on their way back, a day or 2 later is when they went to the FBI with their stories. So
I want to add something to what Mr. Johnson stated, is that this was allegedly a halfway house. Actually, it was a house where the girls came and Jacob York was having sexual relations with almost every single alleged victim.
That's right.
And that was brought up during the course of the trial, and I think he even related that to Damon in terms of showing pictures to him and things like that.
Well, you got my voice here for a second. This information comes up in the trial.
Right. The information, let me tell you what information came up. The fact that he was having sex with most of the alleged victims, that came up. But the information as far as the details of what Damon had to say to establish the circle of conspiracy did not. And what the sister had to say did not come up.
Any more information from the defense that was prevented from coming to the trial? Coming to evidence?
Also, there was also people that would have testified to the fact that Jacob York molested children, and that didn't get entered into as evidence as well.
The so-called accuser is tainted.
Right. That's why we always said that.
That's right.
That the father, Malachi York, is being accused of the son Jacob York's crimes.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. That's what it will boil down to.
Yeah. And basically, in my closing, I stated that if the government states that Jacob York was not this person we've alleged, they should have called him to the stand and cleared his name, and they didn't.
You have appeal on this.
Right.
You have a hard road.
Right. But we have a lot of strong issues for it.
Yes, I know. I mean, and I'm not saying this, maliciously, but we all know, and I can say this, without any doubt, that when you are fighting in this land and in these courts, innocent, allegedly until you're proven guilty, okay, you have a harder road to prove you're innocent or to prove, that you're not guilty than other people, you understand, because we do not have the openness of the courts and whatnot. Plus, we also, some of us know, you may know, I know, is that the courts don't always run the straight road.
Right.
So, let me ask you something in particular to Dr. York's state of mind and his state. You have spoken with him and whatnot.
Right.
What can you tell us about his state of mind and his health in general?
All right. Well, not to get into attorney-client privilege.
No, right.
To get into generally speaking, he's upbeat and he feels very strongly about an appeal, and he basically wants everyone to keep working as diligently as possible on his appeal in any post-trial proceedings to free him and show his innocence. You know what I'm saying? It's a very difficult thing if you've been in jail, 19 months? Going on May will be 2 years. So, well, a little longer than, I guess 22 months. It's a very difficult thing for anyone to handle. You understand?
Yes.
But the type man Dr. York is, I mean, he's conceptually digested it and understands that that's just a process that he has to go through until he's proven innocent. So he's very upbeat about it. He's very confident in the people he has working on the case, the lawyers, and the people in the organization that are working on the case.